This is Spencer Carmen again, and here I have my data pulled up. So my data was used for the research analyzes the sales and profit of different departments across the US. And these departments, like I said before, include paddleboards, kayaks, and canoes. I analyzed this data, uploading it into Tableau via an Excel document, and after syncing the data into Tableau, I created new data. And I'll show that right here, if I can scroll. Yes, right here. And so the way I got this was I divided my profit by my units sold, and that gave me some ratios, which you can see right here. So the points of all this was to allow me to explore the different regions of the US and see which items sold the most and which items sold the least in regards to profit and sales. And one thing I kind of noticed was that sometimes there would be correlations, but that didn't always mean causation. Meaning, for example, just because the Boston Tender was the lowest selling item overall doesn't mean that it was the lowest selling item in every city. For example, in Mississippi, the Cruiser was one of the lower selling items, and also how the lowest sales came from Mississippi, South Carolina, and Louisiana. And so let me start showing you some of my worksheets. So my first worksheet is units sold by product region. And I analyzed this by showing the visualization comparing 2019 and 2020 to show all the units sold, and what this answers is the question of what sold the most and what sold the least and where this happened. And this is relevant because it allows the producer to better manage their project if they need to pull out a product or even a department from a location. So with that said, I'll move on to my next worksheet, which is sales in the South, which I specifically chose because I noticed that the sales in the South were the lowest overall of the regions, so I focused on it because it seemed like it's important. And for example, you can see here that Blackfin paddleboard sold the most units, but I'm more concerned about what sold the least of the items, which is the Boston Tender, which only sold $290 in 2020. So for the next, let's see, I did a profit map. And this profit map shows the South along with the profits. Immediately you can tell that Mississippi has the least amount, and this answers the question of which state in the South sold the least and underperformed, not only in sales but also profits, and this can be seen with and without the labels, and is also less color indicating a weaker profit. So with that, move on to my fourth worksheet, which was the lowest performing cities. So I chose 6 cities, and I wanted to see exactly if there was a correlation or not, and there was not, because the Cruiser in Mississippi, in Gulfport specifically, was the lowest performing item, which kind of gives us an idea that maybe not always the lowest performing item overall is going to be bad in every city. Sometimes a good product like the Cruiser could not do well in Mississippi. But one thing I did notice was how the 6 least performing states, or cities, were in the least 3 performing states, which was a correlation that I noticed. So the next we have the dashboard. In my dashboard, I combined the sales in the South with my profit map above, and I made these two interactive so you can see when I click on a state, it shows that state specifics for all years and even 2019. So I could look at Virginia in 2019 and see what's going on there. Let me scroll down so I could show you that. And you can see that here with the profits. Just going to reset this. And with that said, I will move on to the story. So for my story, I wanted to kind of reiterate what I was talking about before, which was you can kind of see the sales, and then you can see specifically in 2019 and 2020 which ones did the worst, and that's the Boston Tender, underperforming item South. When examining the South, we can see Mississippi has the lowest profit of the states, like I said before. So I focused on that, and we see that the Ascend 12T category had the lowest profits for those 2 years combined of 2019 and 2020. And that is right here with $24 of units sold. But when you look at 2019, some things change. And then in 2020, which I thought was fascinating, was that even though Mississippi was really low, it was not in fact the lowest, which goes to the other two states, which I examined in the next story blank, which were Louisiana and South Carolina having lower numbers. So that kind of shows that even though Mississippi didn't do well, it was not the worst in 2020. And then finally, I have the cruisers, which sold Mississippi from before, which only sold or profited $1,300, which is not a lot. So in a situation like this, it might be wise to stop selling that product, or even stop selling in that city, or even just not sell overall in Mississippi. Those are some options to kind of make profits more positive. And with my conclusion, I concluded that there were some correlations and causations which are going to happen with any kind of data. This is a really useful way of analyzing data. I really enjoyed using Tableau because it allowed me to explore it more visually, which you can't do with other programs like SAS or SPS like as easily. It did take a learning curve to learn this, but not nearly as long as having to learn statistical programs. So I see this being very beneficial of research and using any sort of data. So with that said, I am going to conclude my project, and that is it.